All right. We're going to call this meeting to order. Treasurer, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Trimmer?
Here.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Here.
Mr. Glista?
Here. Approval of minutes, the January 12th, 2016 special meeting minutes work session, the January 12th organizational meeting minutes, the January 27th special meeting minutes work session, and the January 27th regular meeting minutes. So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Approval of the financial report, item 1. Recommend approval of the financial report for the month of January 2016.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer, call the roll.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 2. Recommend approval of accounts payable, payroll, and benefit expenditures for January 2012.
So moved.
Second.
2016.
Did I say 12?
That's
Why
right.
I said 12, I don't know. It is 2016. Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
I don't know where that
Yes.
is.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 3. Recommend approval of advances and advance returns for January 2016.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 4. Recommend approval of appropriations for January 2016.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer, call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 5, recommend approval of an amended certificate of resources for January 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 6, recommend approval of a resolution to participate in the 2016-17 Cooperative School Bus Purchasing Program and to provide authorization to the Ohio Schools Council to advertise and receive bids on behalf of the Board of Education for the cooperative purchase of bus chassis and bodies. There is no service fee to participate in the program. The prior year fee was $325.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer, call roll, please.
You know, if I could just add a note there, Mr. Trimmer. This, at this point in time, doesn't commit the board to purchasing any buses. It's part of the 5 or 6 step process. That commitment really doesn't happen until late in the, probably somewhere in around anywhere from August, somewhere in that time frame. So we're not committing ourselves to anything right now. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under accounts payable, item 1.
I don't think I took a...
Oh, I'm sorry. Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Under accounts payable, item 1, to the Mahoning County ESC for $9,032.82, Title 2A services.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Under recognitions, Dr. Weingart.
Yes, excuse me. We have several of them, and I am happy to do this. First of all, we would like to recognize Advisor Mackenzie Wallace and student council members for a very successful homecoming. Congratulations to Queen Elsa Bueller and court members Haley Davis, Morgan Erb, Destiny Gooseby, Kaylee Manning, Kyra Sharp, and Hannah Sproul. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Zamorelli and the cast and crew of The King and I for a wonderful performance, several performances. I'd like to recognize Teenagers of the Month, Alliance Elks, BPO number 467, Lauren Steidel and Trey Hillier, and Alliance Chamber of Commerce, Rob Lozier. Alliance Review Athletes of the Week, we have one Athlete of the Week, and that is Natalie Zukowski. And for Christy Berry, teacher Christy Berry, who was recently honored by the Alliance Area Chamber of Commerce as Teacher of the Month.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
Thank you. WBEA comments? WBCEA comments? Visitors' comments. Okay, so we have 11 visitors who have signed up to speak to the board. Prior to doing that, I'd like to give you a little instruction to that effect. The Board of Education welcomes visitors' comments at school board meetings. You will have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak to the school board. The school board will listen but will not answer the questions or engage in a dialogue regarding the issue you are addressing. Please do not interpret that to mean that we are not listening or do not care. The board will not generally respond to an issue or complaint until it has been referred to the administration to investigate through the proper channels. If this is a complaint regarding a student or an employee of the West Branch District, I will ask you to schedule a time where you can meet with the executive with us in executive session. Please state your name and address for the record when you speak. And right now we have Chris Martig.
I guess I wanted to talk about...
Before you, Mr. Martig,
I'm sorry.
can you talk about, you have to state your name and your address for the
My
record.
name is Chris Martig. My address is 14816 Benton Road, Salem, Ohio.
Ben, what do you say?
Benton Road,
Benton.
Salem?
Yes.
Yeah, 14.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about the early start of school last year and what the plans were going forward for this year in regards to the fair. This affects more than 175 West Branch students. I'm an active 4-H volunteer, so I kind of see firsthand how this affects things. I'm also the parent of students and 4-H members. So I was also in 4-H as a child, and it has always been tradition to start school Labor Day. These kids put a lot of work into these projects, and the Monday and Tuesday before the fair is essentially their dress rehearsal. It's their most critical time to have their projects prepped to go, and also the experience of taking their projects to the fair, setting up their display, setting up their spot. When they have to go to school Monday and Tuesday, they miss out on that. And it is robbing them part of their experience. My other concern is how productive are the school days, or how productive were the school days? I'm going to form this in the form of a question. How productive were the school days, going to school for 4 days, being off for the weekend, going back to school for 2 days, then being off for an entire week? How productive does that become? How productive of school days does that become for the children? I have a concern that maybe those days are not being utilized, or can't be utilized because there's no continuity. They're on for 4 days, off for 2, back for 2, off for 6. Essentially, the Tuesday after Labor Day becomes the first day of school all over again, in a sense. So I would have concern of, are those school days productive? I'm not going to fault the board for trying this, but I would also ask that you would review it, evaluate what was the benefit of doing it. Was there a benefit to starting school early?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Kat Ruthroff, and she did put her address on here.
Okay.
But go ahead and state it, though.
Okay. Kat Ruthroff, 11881 West Middletown Road, Salem, 44460. All right. My name is Kat Ruthroff, and I spoke last month at the meeting about the school calendar. I spoke on a personal level and how the calendar affected my family. Today I want to speak on a community level. Last night I used the power of technology and opened a discussion on this important issue of the school calendar for our West Branch schools. In this day and age, we're able to communicate immediately and quickly with each other and let our feelings and opinions be known to each other when we have an important issue that affects our day-to-day lives. What I found out last night was that this issue is important to many of us in the district, not only for the reason of the fair, but because of transition issues with kindergartners who don't want to leave their mommies, to the effects that the starting and stopping of the calendar to let out for the fair has on our special needs students, to the loss of vacation and family time that had been planned for several generations is affected also. Our community spoke out. I did not read one dissenting comment. Maybe you've heard some. I know that the testing seems to be the major concern, to have as many instructional days in before those tests loom over us. but does 6 days really matter? Do they justify the loss of family time, the real-world education, the disruption in schedules for our most delicate? I know many students miss school days due to the fair. I think it was harder on teachers to try and track down missed schoolwork and homework from these students. So many more groups are involved in the fair than just 4-H. There's Junior Granges, Future Farmers of America, Campfire, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Young Leaders, Outstanding Youth, and the Junior Fair Board. Also, our very own West Branch Band performs at the band show, and our cheerleaders also perform at the cheerleading demonstration. Also, we have youth and families who work at the fair or hold summer jobs to gain last-minute money before the school year begins. In this day and age, more and more parents are less involved in their children's lives. We as educators have to pick up the slack and teach students things that were originally taught at home. We have an outstanding community that wants to pick up the slack and spend this time teaching our own children. The lessons in all of these groups complement the lessons learned in school. Unfortunately, our time is scheduled at the beginning of the school year. Lastly, my family was fortunate enough to visit the Hamilton County Fair this past summer. This is the county that encompasses Cincinnati. This fair had 3 cows, 1 horse, 3 sheep, and a goat. The large city had pushed 4-H and farming out of this community. Students were no longer involved. These types of groups keep our children out of trouble and allow something to do for our children who can't do sports or don't have a musical ability. It's important to keep our children active in areas that will keep them out of trouble and learning skills that will make them good citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Stacy Aldridge.
Stacy Aldridge, 26223. Oh, wait.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
26223. Wildwood Drive, it's all one word. Beloit, 44609.
I can't.
We good?
Thank you.
My biggest concern with starting the school years as early as we did this year was just how disjointed it seemed. Trying to get the kids into an established routine, going for a couple days, staying home for a couple days, trying to get just that whole morning routine going. We are not part of the fair, but we attend the fair. Growing up, I was always involved in the 4-H. I know how valuable the 4-H is for the community, for those kids that set up those displays, for those families that do, even just the ones that run the concessions and work in the barns and help. And we always go see Mrs. Blocker. I'm sure there's other teachers that are there too. So it also is disruptive for them as well. I understand the purpose of trying to score better on the testing. I understand that that's a real concern. I don't know that starting before Labor Day allowed them as much extra time as it may have seemed to. I think it took longer for them to establish a routine in the classroom. I think it took longer for the kids to just get a handle on the changes. My daughter was in 3rd grade. They were changing classes. She had 3 new teachers. It's totally different setup than having 1 teacher that you're getting used to. It takes longer. We don't have a lot of the learning issues that some of the kids have, but there are a lot of kids in the district that have special concerns where they need a structured schedule. And this kind of a stutter start is very difficult on them and their families. Those are my concerns. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Mike Helm.
I'm going to stand over here if that's all right. I don't like talking with my back to anybody. My name is Mike Helm, 24.
You're
Not
24?
my age,
What?
whichever.
Fine.
24029 Center Road, Alliance. You need the rest of that? Ohio?
I'm fine.
44601. Okay. I'm here speaking on behalf of the West Branch Education Association and myself as a lifelong resident of this community. And I want to try to give everybody a perspective from the teacher's point of view. Some of the questions that were brought up, Mr. Mardick's question about productivity, there was a lot of productivity in those 7 days. In 7 days, a teacher can get a unit done, a whole unit. I mean, that's huge. You know, the issue that is before us a lot of times is out of our hands. It's not in our control. It's not the teachers. It's not the administration. It's not the school board. It's our state legislators and what they've done with the high-stakes testing. And it's here. I mean, we can't do anything about it. But the way that affects teachers in what is called a value-added score, that's 50% of your evaluation. And we're talking about teachers' livelihoods. And the more days they can have with their kids prior to the testing, that's important. But also, as a lifelong resident, I understand the importance of the Canfield Fair and all those civic organizations and 4-H, and we get that. We understand that. We think that there's got to be a compromise. There has to be. It can't be one way or the other. There has to be a compromise so everybody can live with the schedule and the calendar. We think we offered that in a committee that put forth the calendar. We were respectful of the fair and the kids that are working there. And there are some issues that I think the school board would have to discuss about some of the extra things that went with it. I don't know how they would address those issues. But we're talking about 2,000 students, okay? At that time of year, we have about 30% of our students already here involved with football, volleyball, cross country, soccer, band. I mean, we're talking about 30% of our students are already here. Okay, so why not use that time and get them into class? Okay, and it's starting after Labor Day would put our students at a real disadvantage educationally. They lose about 10 days of time prior to testing. The testing window is set by the state, and that is at the end of April, 1st of May. We can't do anything about that. So we have to have our content covered by that time. Obviously, teachers are going to want as much time as they can have with the kids prior to the testing. After Labor Day, our students lose about 7 to 10 days of instructional time if we start school after Labor Day. We have to be able to compromise. I mean, this can't become a microcosm of our society where it's either this way or this way. This is a great community, and the teachers and the community and the school district have to work together and come to a compromise and be able to fulfill both ends of that situation.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Michelle Randlett.
Michelle Randlett, 415 North Johnson Road, Sebring, Ohio.
You have to say that again.
I think I got it.
415 North Johnson Road, Sebring.
Okay.
And I myself have also been a lifelong member of this community. We attend the fair every year. I think some of you don't realize, unless you're actually a farmer, how much work actually goes into these projects. And I think it's a big loss to the kids involved that you're taking away from them. They learn leadership through this, responsibility, respect. They do all different kinds of projects, not just animals, but sewing, crafts, cooking. And, you know, I agree with what Mr. Helms says, but I also think, you know, we're so involved and we have to start in August because of the state testing. But you know what? I don't hear one complaint when we miss 5 snow days. That's 5 days. If we want to do something, why don't we start making snow days up? If we miss a day, we make it up. Then we're not losing a day of instruction. We had a ton of 2-hour delays last year. None of that time was made up. I think we had at least 8, right there is 16 hours. All of lost instruction that was never made up. And when we had to make up the snow days last year, we didn't make up full days. We added a half hour here and there. I'm sorry, we did not make up a day's work in that hour time. So if you're so concerned about us losing instructional time for the state testing, I think there are other options we can look at. I mean, the state allows us 5 snow days. Does that mean we have to take them and we can't make them up? I think there's other things we can do so the kids in the fair with the projects and still do their projects without feeling, the parents feeling a push to say, well, should I send them to school or should I send them to the fair? And I just think there has to be a compromise somewhere, I agree. But, you know, I've been living in this district for 42 years, and we never started before the fair until last year. And we had other Labor Days that were late in September. And we still started the Wednesday after Labor Day. And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I respond to that?
We have to go through the list. Got to go through the list first.
She was
She was last one.
She was the last one on the list. She was the last speaker.
If I'm not, that's okay. I just wondered if I was allowed.
I think you've had your
Kiki, I would like to too.
Then never mind.
Thank you.
They'll just drag it on and on.
All right.
Here a while.
Correspondence to the board, and I would just like to make mention that the school board and through the superintendent's office has received and reviewed a list of petitions that were submitted to the middle school, through the middle school, in regards to the starting of the school calendar. And we just wanted you to know that these were received and reviewed. Any other correspondence?
No, that's it.
All right, report. Do we have a report to the board? No? Old business, which is none, and new business. Item 1, recommend approval of a change in the school calendar with January 25th, 2016 and January 26th, 2016 as being calamity days due to water issues for the high school and middle school.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 2, recommend approval of a change in the school calendar with February 16th, 2016 as being a calamity day due to weather.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 3, recommend approval to enter in an agreement with the Columbiana County ESC to provide educational services for a student at the Lisbon Opportunity School, seen in Exhibit 1.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 4, recommend approval to enter in an agreement with Paul's Taxi to transport a student to the Lisbon Opportunity School for the 2015-16 school year in Exhibit 2.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 5 is the recommend approval to adopt the school calendar for the 2016-17 academic year, and these are located in Exhibit 3. And what we will do is we will be, first we're going to have some discussion on the board, open this up for discussion prior to a vote, and then we will be voting on Exhibit 3A first. Exhibit 3A is the recommended calendar from the committee. That is where classes would begin, first day of classes on August 22nd, 2016. Are there any board members who wish to share their opinions on this matter?
I would. I'm Mrs. McLaughlin. I was on the committee, and the committee was comprised of administrators, school secretaries, teachers from grade school up through the high school. and myself. Mrs. Carnegie was also on the committee, but she was not able to attend. I did present her opinion to the committee, as I also presented my own. She had given me her opinion because she could not attend. So the committee came up with this calendar, and everyone was in full agreement. May I say, except Mrs. Carnegie? Sure. So I have to go with my vote in what the committee recommended. I was on the committee, and I totally agreed with them. So my vote will be as the committee stated.
And I'll speak also. I'm John Wallace, and I know this is a very sensitive issue. I mean, there's a lot of tradition here, and but the committee was comprised of educators who I have no doubt the best interest in the needs of our kids. And if you look at all the schools in Mahoning County, 11 out of the 13 start before Labor Day. If you look at all the NBC schools, everyone but Marlington starts before Labor Day. United starts before Labor Day, Poland. And years ago, they didn't start before Labor Day either, but there's a reason to now, and I really truly believe it's for the betterment of the kids. I also think the committee did a really good job this year of trying to address some of the downfalls of last year's calendar. We are starting earlier. There are 7 instructional days and then a break. And they also said that, you know, as Mr. Mardick said, there's the need that the 2 days before the fair to set up and everything. Those won't, if those kids, the 4-H kids or whoever need to take those days, that's not going to be held against them attendance-wise or anything. So the compromise, I believe, is there.
We're not going till Wednesday.
And then we're not going till Wednesday, the day after Labor Day, so you have that day after Labor Day to get all your supplies and everything back. I know it's tough for the kids. It's long days, and you know, everybody has a choice in what they do. I like going to the fair too, and I do go. But I mean, I think we've accommodated a lot of the issues that arose last year and taken those into consideration. So I'm also going to vote for before Labor Day.
Do either one of you have anything you want to share?
Well, I mean, I can share my opinion if that helps, but obviously Mrs. McLaughlin told my opinion. We are a 4-H family. That's probably what obviously is going to help with my decision. But last year I am on the committee. It was a day that I worked. I couldn't get there. I would have voiced my opinion strongly then. Lori obviously did voice my opinion. But I was on it last year, and I fully agree. I mean, no disrespect to any teachers, administrators, the calendar committee, or nothing. But when you go through it firsthand, it's a little different. I have 3 kids in this district, all 3 in 4-H, 7th grader, 5th grader, 2nd grader. The 7th grader does nothing, absolutely nothing. Love the son to death, but all he does is that. And with him doing nothing but that, I did not realize the impact it had on him until after the fact. And when I say that, it's the days prior to when he walks, he clips his cow, that's when crunch time is, the week, 2 weeks beforehand. That's when his bread, you know, that's when he does everything. He didn't show nearly as well. He didn't get a ribbon at all for any of that, when the prior years he always has. What's this teach him? He has a checking account when he was 8 years old. He balances his own checkbook. He writes his own check when he buys his feed and his cows. I mean, he is learning so much more from what he's doing than that 7 days of instructional time. I get it. I disagree with the state test. I hate that the legislation puts it down on us, but I'm not ready to cave yet on all that with them. I'd rather fight the state than saying that's going to happen. But going back to everything, I have to say, Mrs. Aldridge saying how it was, I quoted you saying it was disjointed start. Yes, it was. I had many kindergarten and first grade parents talking to me how they finally got their kid off their leg and now they're back on as soon as we started back up. So there's a little more to than 4-H. Obviously, that's my point that I'm going with because I witnessed firsthand. So that's my stand on it. Like I said, no disrespect to anyone that on the committee anyway. State testing, I mean, it is what it is. But I did spend a lot of time looking how John looked at the calendar and saw who starts beforehand and afterhand and everything else. I compared our scores for the last so many years to most of those places. And we're West Branch. I mean, we're right there. I mean, yes, we can be better, so can everybody else. But if you can show me that we're that much lower because we're starting 7 days behind everybody else, then that's the data I want to see. There's Mickey Kennedy's opinion.
Thank you. I just can't have any public speaks at this point, sir. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the committee and appreciate their work. You know, we generally, when the committee makes recommendations to the board, we take those recommendations under advisement, of course, but it is ultimately the Board of Education's decision. And those are just recommendations that are very well thought out. But we also are community members, and we also have been receptive to a lot of discussion on this. I want to tell you that we take this, the entire board, and there's a lot of opinions, a very heated discussion. We take it very seriously. We've taken this matter under great consideration. There's been a lot of discussion, a lot of things weighed on both sides. I think there are some compelling arguments on both sides of this argument, and there's reasons to do both. Ultimately, though, it is up to the elected officials to decide the school calendar, but I want to add that West Branch is a unique community. There's a reason why the state of Ohio established years ago, our forefathers, local boards of education. And those local boards of education are there so that the local Board of Education can render their opinions as they see what's in the best interest of their community, their students, and their staff. Under item 5, recommend approval to adopt the school calendar for the 2016-17 academic year in Exhibit 3A. That would be the calendar starting August 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
No.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
No.
And Mr. Trimmer?
No. Having 3A not passed, we will be then voting on item 3B, which is the calendar which will start the first day for classes for students would be September 7th, 2016.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Wallace?
No.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
No.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
And Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 6, recommend approval to continue offering the open enrollment option for the 2016-17 school year for both adjacent and non-adjacent school districts.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yep.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 7, recommend approval to enter in an agreement with the Eastern Gateway Community College for College Credit Plus for the 2016-17 school year listed in Exhibit 4.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 8, recommend approval to enter in an agreement with Kent State University for College Credit Plus for the 2016-17 school year in Exhibit 5.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer, call the roll.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 9, recommend approval of a resolution for the West Branch Local Schools to withdraw from the Northeastern Buckeye Conference Athletic League effective June 1, 2018, and as of August 2018, the West Branch Local School District will compete as a founding member of a new athletic conference to include Alliance Canton Local, Carrollton Local, Marlington Local, Minerva Local, and Salem City Schools, as in Exhibit 6.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer, call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 10, recommend approval to the Sebring West Branch Fast Pitch League to utilize the high school girls softball fields for the 2016 summer with coordination through the athletic directors.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 11, recommend approval to compensate Herbert Ward for in lieu of transportation for the 2015-16 school year at the established IRS mileage rate from preschool to home for days in attendance.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 12, recommend a resolution to enter into an agreement with Timothy Hetrick to serve as the certified water operator of record for Knox Elementary School and Damascus Elementary School effective January 29, 2016, as seen in Exhibit 7.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll.
Mrs. Carnegie?
I abstain.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 13, recommend approval to reimburse the middle school PIE $440 from a $9,350 field trip donation in January 2016 due to a change in vendor and pricing.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Me.
Ms. McLaughlin, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 8, recommend acceptance of gifts and donations as listed in Exhibit 8, and we certainly thank everyone for those generous donations.
Wow.
There are some very generous donations.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 15, under Personnel. A, recommend approval to employ the following staff as mentors for the 2015-16 school year as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item B, recommend approval to employ Katie Royal as a home instructor for the 2015-16 school year on an as-needed basis.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item C, recommend approval of the following addition to the certificated license substitute list for the 2015-16 school year pending certification. Claire Funkhauser.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 9, recommend approval of the professional leave superintendent's assignments requests on Exhibit 9.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item E, recommend approval to accept the resignation of Nathan Heddleston as boys head track coach effective immediately.
So moved. Second.
Treasurer call the roll, please.
Can I get those motions and seconds again, please?
Mr. Glista moved, I second it.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item F, recommend approval to compensate Krista Harris for choreography for The King and I, funded by proceeds from the musical.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item G, recommend approval of the following supplementals for the 2015-16 school year pending certification as listed.
So second.
Treasurer call the roll, please.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. And we have an addendum under new business. The following items are listed on the addendum. Item 1, personnel, recommend approval of the job description for preschool intervention specialist in Exhibit 1A.
So moved.
Second.
Treasurer call the roll.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 2, recommend approval of job description intervention specialist in Exhibit 2A.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. Item 3, recommend approval to employ Luke Butcher as a scoreboard clock operator for the 2015-16 school year on an as-needed basis.
So moved.
Second. Treasurer call the roll, please.
Mrs. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mrs. Carnegie?
Yes.
Mr. Glista?
Yes.
Mr. Trimmer?
Yes. And motion to adjourn?
I make motion we adjourn.
Second.
And so it's declared.
Brought 3 with me, but I can't find it.